Let's consider the N64 controller, one of the most contentious controllers of all time. A controller that I like. A lot, actually, because I don't judge controllers based on an overall spectrum, rather how well they work with the console they were designed for. In that aspect, it's hard to argue for a better controller for N64 games than this original design. Laugh at it all you want, there is simply no better controller, in my honest opinion. To be completely fair, most of the contention involving this controller revolves around the analog stick. A rather flawed and outdated design, to be sure. The real problem with this stick design is how the internal mechanics within degrade and grind away over time, which leads to a much looser stick with a much higher dead zone. You are literally losing inputs, so anyone who claims to have had a bad time with N64 games thanks to a bad stick are totally valid. However, when a stick is in good shape, then there's no better stick for N64 games, and I will die on that hill. The durability is still a major concern, and that's why there's been alternatives on the market in the past several decades. Unfortunately, good alternatives to the original stick design can be tricky. Kitschbent has easily available replacement gears and bowls to theoretically restore an original stick to its former glory. I've purchased these replacements several times and I'm afraid to say I've never been that happy with them. I hear that you may still need to sand away some excess material and simply hope you get a good set since the production quality still isn't as pristine as Nintendo's. But even after several attempts, I can't seem to get a good quality set. Hopefully you'll be more lucky if you choose to seek these out. They are pretty cheap, so there's not much to lose. Replacement gears and bowls of higher quality aren't exactly well documented. The Steel Sticks line of replacement parts seem ideal for the most hardcore N64 fans, but my days, they are expensive. You could also just add back in the material on original gears and bowls, but I'd rather not do that, to be honest. The most popular replacement for N64 sticks are modules designed to replicate GameCube analog sticks. Now, why GameCube? Well, I feel it's because the GameCube's analog stick is a happy middle ground between the N64's and modern sticks you're used to today. The GameCube's analog stick is more in line with newer sticks while still maintaining many of the characteristics of an N64 stick. The circular design of the cap, the octagonal gate, and one of the less talked about aspects, the unique spring resistance. Okay, seeing as I never heard anyone talk about it, we're gonna talk about it. Something special about N64's analog sticks and the GameCube analog sticks is that they have a very particular spring resistance, or otherwise that's what my friend concluded when we discussed this. See, you know how when you move a modern analog stick, it's smooth and slick? Well, it's not exactly the case with these older sticks. These sticks have a bit of grit to them, texture, kind of bumpy. It sort of guides you to the corners of the gate in a way. It's something that you can only really feel and not quite explain. It's a very distinctive characteristics of these sticks to me. One that even the Dreamcast controller has, which really surprised me since I haven't used a Dreamcast controller until fairly recently. The Switch Joy-Cons, in a subtle way, also have this unique characteristic. Truthfully, I'm still not exactly sure what it is, but since my friend and I concluded that it's a unique spring resistance, that's how I will identify it. If we're dead wrong, then feel free to explain in the comments. With this in mind, it makes sense why manufacturers would choose GameCube as a basis for replicating the N64 stick. Unfortunately, replacement sticks in the past decade or so haven't been that great, at least for N64 purists. For casuals who simply want a more comfortable feeling stick, with the rest of the N64's controller design intact, then it's a perfect replacement for them. Interestingly, in the past year alone, we've seen a resurgence of updated GCN Style N64 sticks. I've managed to acquire all of these sticks and would like to put them through their paces. The sticks in question is this one by XYAB, an accessory manufacturer who seems to only deal in bulk sales. Luckily, I managed to snag this one off of eBay for about $13. Then we have 8BitDo's recent Hall Effect GCN Style N64 stick. This module is supposed to be a companion piece to their wireless Bluetooth replacement boards for various controllers, but they do sell the stick standalone for $20, so I've acquired one for one of my many N64 controllers. Then we have another new one from RetroBit, which is another Hall Effect stick for $15. Now, Hall Effect to me is just another buzz term for wow factor. I get with the use of magnets rather than traditional potentiometers, then there is theoretically zero chance for these sticks to drift, which is a real problem for modern controllers. But whoopity fucking do these sticks are Hall Effect, that doesn't automatically mean they're actually good. We're gonna find that out for ourselves. In the first test, we'll be feeling the physical quality of the sticks themselves, the technical data from input test software, and finally how well it translates in Mario 64, as there's probably no better game that demonstrates analog stick quality for N64. Here we go. XYAB. This was the first GCN style replacement stick I received after reading promising things about it. The first surprising thing I noticed is how the octagonal gate matches the N64 original much more closely, being more oblong compared to a perfect octagon that most other sticks have. The size and shape is almost 1-to-1, which is a great start. The stick itself has a decent amount of resistance. It's quite smooth to move around, and I'll say now this stick, as well as every other replacement stick, doesn't have the same spring resistance as actual GameCube sticks, meaning no textured feel that guides you to the corners. I understand if most people actually hate it and would prefer not to have it, but it still stands as a distinct feature of N64 and GameCube sticks, so its absence is a downgrade for me. The rubber material feels a little slippery on the thumb, almost like having sweaty hands even if they're dry. The edges of the gate also have a slightly slippery feel to them, which makes it hard to stick to the corners of the gate. As an aside, this particular assembly was rather tight, which led to the Z button to feel quite mushy after putting the controller back together. It gets further interesting when we put it through the input tester. Initially, I was flabbergasted because it's essentially perfect. The values of the stick shape are exactly like a brand new original N64 stick. The shape is an exact match. I was pretty excited with these results, but unfortunately it's more complicated than that. Let's see how inputs are actually being registered. For here, we're not worried about the shape of the gate, we're simply seeing how this cursor moves and how inputs are seen. You may notice that there is quite a bit of space in between the dotted input values, even when I move the stick slowly. This means critical inputs are straight up missing, almost like a perpetual dead zone that encompasses the entire stick. The inputs also kind of fidget around a bit, making it hard to make basic shapes. We'll see how it functions in-game. The perfect shape of the gate as well as the physical build quality are promising for this replacement stick, but the missing inputs and how sporadic the inputs are being registered are very concerning for me. The ultimate test is the game, so let's see how it is. So my main test here is how flexible Mario's movements are when going slow and how Mario handles when turning. As you can see, Mario turns rather sporadically, and I have trouble maintaining a consistent slower speed. This is most likely caused by the missing inputs all throughout the analog stick. All I'm trying to do is slowly rotate the stick around without increasing or decreasing my speed too much. But thanks to the missing inputs, it's quite challenging with this stick. The next test is how well Mario's ramp up in speed is, and with this stick, it's okay. But again, because of the missing inputs, Mario still accelerates a little too quickly. When playing the game normally, these issues aren't that noticeable. However, the missing inputs really go a long way at inhibiting the experience, that even at full speed, Mario snaps to the corners too much. Almost like you're locked in 8 directions. You know how in Mario 3D World, the game has full analog movement, but Mario and company will snap to 8 directions to accommodate the angular level design? It's kind of a similar thing here, but because Mario 64 is more open-ended, it just feels bad. I'm pretty let down because this stick initially had a lot of promise, but because the inputs are missing all throughout the whole stick, it causes the game to noticeably not play as well as original sticks. If your original N64 stick is worn beyond repair and you're on a tight budget, then this may be an okay substitution. In all fairness, I think most N64 games won't suffer too much from the lack of precise control, but for me, playing Mario 64, this stick ain't it, which sucks because it got so much right. Damn shame. The 8-bit DOS stick looks pretty similar to the previous one, but there are a few differences. The octagonal gate is now like a perfect octagon, which I'm not entirely sure how much it actually affects things. The rubber material is a little better, but still kinda slippery. It has a similar amount of resistance to the XYAB stick, maybe a little less. It feels quite smooth to move around, and the edges of the gate are pleasantly smooth. The corners are more easily felt, which could be from the more evenly shaped octagonal gate. This stick can be clicked in for some reason and serves no functional purpose to my understanding. I say this is a small but commendable improvement compared to the XYAB stick, but let's see how the input test fares. So the gate shape results aren't as nice as the XYAB stick, but it's still quite close. It begs to be mentioned that most OG N64 sticks aren't going to be perfect either because of their degradation. So it's far from a deal breaker to me if these results aren't completely perfect. What's interesting is how it's still mimicking the more oblong shape of the original octagonal gate. Maybe this would irk N64 purists, but personally I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I think what matters most is how inputs are actually being registered. In this regard, this stick is much better than the previous one. Notice how much smoother the cursor's movements are and how inputs are being more consistently registered. What's kind of weird is how, because the original spring resistance is absent, it results in a more circular shape being registered opposed to an octagon. Not really sure how much it would affect in-game. So far, I'd say this is vastly superior to the XYAB stick, but as always, the results will really show when playing a game. Right away, I felt much more in control when moving Mario at slower speeds. It's pleasantly easy to keep Mario tiptoeing while rotating around. You can also see how Mario turns more naturally thanks to all inputs being here and accounted for. Mario's acceleration is also much more natural. You can see for yourself how seamless Mario goes from a tiptoe to a full run. Even though the edge results weren't quite as nice as the XYAB stick, and the gate doesn't match the original as much, the fact that this stick, input-wise, is much more responsive makes this way better than the XYAB stick. This applies to normal gameplay as well. Maybe only by watching it doesn't seem like much of a difference, but believe me, I felt it. I felt much more comfortable performing tricks, so for the slightly extra cost, the 8BitDo stick is worth getting over the XYAB stick in just about every regard. I'd say if you have a very worn original stick or don't like the original design, then this would be my recommended alternative. The replacement stick from RetroBit is one I was very looking forward to because design-wise the cap of the stick looked the closest to a real GCN controller. First impressions were really nice. The gate is a little larger and the cap is also noticeably larger than the 8BitDo stick. The cap also has a more rounded shape which lines closer to real GCN sticks. The rubber material is without a doubt the best so far. Nice and clingy. Very close to GameCube sticks. The gate is once again a perfect octagon, except it's a little larger. The stick is smooth, with maybe just a little less resistance compared to 8BitDo, probably to compensate for the large size of the gate. Pretty happy with it so far, but let's see how it performs in the input tester. Well, it's a uniform shape at least. But as you can see, compared to the original values, this stick is fundamentally going to be more sensitive compared to original sticks. I'd like to say it doesn't matter that much, but people who hate it when Mario starts running too soon are probably not excited right now, seeing how the inputs are registered and... damn, spacious input readings, meaning there's missing inputs. Like with the XYAB stick, this makes it hard to draw a shape and makes me less confident that this will perform well in-game. Surprisingly, it was quite easy to maintain slower speeds, despite this stick technically being much more sensitive. I think it's because the stick doesn't have as much resistance as the previous one, and with the gate being much larger. Mario still kind of snaps when turning, maybe not as much as the XYAB stick, but you can see a slight fidgety movement due to, once again, missing inputs. The acceleration test surprisingly isn't that bad, again probably due to the loose stick resistance and large gate. But even so, Mario is at a full run far sooner to how close you are at pushing the stick all the way. For normal play, I'd say this stick is perfectly playable. It has the same missing input problem as the XYAB stick, but thanks to its looser feel and larger gate, it's easier to accommodate in-game. I wouldn't let the Hall effect nature of the stick be tantalizing, as the stick itself doesn't perform that great. I wouldn't really recommend it, to be honest, only if you hate the original stick and are on a budget. I'll say it's better than the XYAB stick, at least I'd rather play with it. But if I had known better, then I would have rather have gotten another 8BitDo stick because of how well that one performs. Okay, here's a bonus because I happen to have one, the RetroBit Tribute 64 controller. I got this controller because I really wanted the Hori pad that inspired it, but I am not spending the money to acquire one. I'm sorry. I only bring this up because it's actually a little different to the proprietary GCN replacement stick. The gate is a little smaller, closer to the 8BitDo stick, and the stick is a little shorter compared to the other RetroBit stick. The rubber is once again a little slippery, which is kind of a shame since the other stick felt so good on the thumb. This stick also probably has the smallest resistance, which isn't to my taste personally. As far as the controller itself goes, it's fine. The buttons feel okay, though I don't really like the mushy feel of the triggers. Like, they have this shape so you can press it like a trigger, but you can also press it down like a regular button and it just feels weird. Can't say I'm a fan. How the controller sits in my hands also ain't that great. I mean, this is really subjective, but it's like they mimic the mold of the handles on the original, but the way it presses against my middle finger and how it puts my hands at an angle, I can't say I love it. Let's look at the input test results and oh my god! So based on these readings, this stick is even more sensitive to the proprietary stick and can't even maintain a consistent shape. Not good. What's weird is that the Tribute stick at least is much better at having all inputs intact. The cursor moves more consistently, and it was pretty easy to draw a circle. This gives me a little hope that not all is lost with this controller, but we'll see. Okay, so maintaining a slower speed is once again surprisingly easy. And looking at the acceleration test, Mario does accelerate a little more smoothly compared to the proprietary stick thanks to the better input registration. But with the edge results being horrendous, turning is a little fucked up. You can see how badly Mario fidgets around. When playing normally, and by that I mean always running and never bothering to attempt slower speeds, then the stick is fine. I oddly felt more comfortable with this stick on this controller compared to the proprietary stick. I guess it's sort of a placebo effect, where because I know I'm holding a fundamentally different controller, I can mentally adjust to how different the stick feels compared to an original stick. With the proprietary stick, the lackluster performance feels more jarring as I'm still holding an N64 controller. Neither of these options is really ideal in my opinion, but for an extra $5, I'd recommend getting the Tribute just to have another controller on hand. There may still be hope as I hear the wireless version of the Tribute is of slightly higher quality, with a stick that's a little closer to the sensitivity of real N64 sticks. My only hope with it then is if it's better at input registration. The Hall Effect stick had okay sensitivity but missing inputs. The wired Tribute controller had horrible sensitivity with more consistent inputs. If the wireless Tribute controller has the best of both worlds, then I could be interested in it, and may give it a recommendation, but I can't say for certain. Another bonus, just using a GameCube controller with an adapter. I'm sure many adapters exist, but the one I hear is the most trusted is Rapnet. This adapter has a built-in controller pack for saving, which is nice, but doesn't support Rumble unfortunately. There is, thankfully, a proprietary button remapper on their website. You can save several profiles to cater for various N64 games. So without seeing how the stick fares, this is a very accommodating adapter, and I applaud Rapnet for it. The stick is a real GameCube stick. For older OEM controllers, the stick may be a little loose, but I've taken very good care over my Smash branded controllers, so the sticks are as fresh as they can be. One immediate benefit is that because this is a legit GameCube stick, the spring resistance is here, leading to a more authentic feel to the N64 stick. Other than that, it's a GameCube stick. By far has the most resistance and best feeling rubber cap. There's no saying how close it is to a GameCube stick, because it's just a GameCube stick. But really, we're not here to judge the stick. Not really. We're seeing how well this adapter translates the stick for N64 inputs. It's not that great, but not the worst. I mean, it's kind of weird. Like one half of the stick is trying to mimic the octagonal gate, while the other half just gives up and becomes a square. At least we can presume it won't be too sensitive, which is nice. The input readings are really interesting. Thankfully, there doesn't seem to be any missing inputs, but here's the weird thing. Because of the unique spring resistance, the shape is no longer a circle, but more of a square, as that's the shape that naturally forms when I try to move the stick in a circular motion halfway. This is interesting. I feel it could have been a little better, but I have a good feeling about this. Right away, I'm enjoying the tighter resistance of the GameCube stick a lot more than the previous sticks. Maintaining slower speeds is good and natural. Turning may look unflattering at first, since Mario does sort of snap to the corners a bit, but that's only because of the unique spring resistance of GameCube sticks. When rotating the stick, you can feel when you've reached the corner without pressing the stick all the way. Maybe you can interpret the stick not being as precise, but it lends to a more legit playing experience compared to the smoother spring resistance of other sticks. This also probably has the best acceleration test results so far. A lot of analog space is dedicated to Mario's slower movements, and he only brakes at a full run right at the edge of the stick, as it should. Thanks to the more legit spring resistance and tighter feel of the GameCube stick, this is the first one where Mario's slower running speed animations are comfortably achieved. Even though the edge results weren't the best, this adapter does a good job making a GameCube stick feel really comfortable here. To tell you the truth, this was my preferred N64 stick alternative for a while. It's not that affordable, real GameCube controllers are getting pricey now, and the adapter itself is about $30. For experiencing the concept of a GameCube stick on N64, this is the best way to go about it. I think I like it slightly more than the 8-bit DOE stick. Overall, I put them neck and neck as they both have their pros and cons. 8-bit DOE performs very well for what it does, has a better edge result, it's quite affordable, and is a worthwhile replacement for worn OEM sticks. The Rapnet adapter with a GameCube controller, while not as nice in the edge test, has a more legit feel since it's a real GameCube stick with its unique spring resistance, which goes a long way for me, and it has the best acceleration test of the bunch. However, it's certainly not the cheapest option. If none of the other options satisfy you as a GameCube stick freak, then this is the best way, in my honest opinion. So if I had to rank these alternatives to provide you with the best option, I put XYAB at the very bottom. Its stick geometry is perfect and the accurate octagonal gate is commendable. However, this stick has by far the worst registered inputs, and that combined with the tight resistance of this stick makes using this really not awesome for precise play. I suppose it's better than the other GameCube style sticks that have been around for the past decade or so, but it's still only recommendable as a budget alternative. Next will be the RetroBit Hall Effect stick. I had high hopes with this one, but I was pretty disappointed with it. It may feel really good on the thumb, but the missing inputs and high sensitivity makes this not ideal for me. Again, I can only recommend this as a budget purchase. If the Retro Fighters analog stick performs similar to this, I certainly won't have any interest in it. After that will be the Tribute 64 wired controller. Its geometry test is absolutely heinous, but at least it isn't missing critical inputs. In actual gameplay, it's still about as bad as the Hall Effect stick, but since it's a whole new controller at only $5 more, I'd recommend it more. Again, only if you're on a budget. Finally, it's a tie between the 8BitDo Hall Effect stick and a GameCube controller with Rapnet's Adapter. I was pleasantly surprised with the 8BitDo stick. It's the only third-party alternative I can comfortably recommend over the original stick design. $20 may not be the cheapest, but you certainly aren't paying for cheap here. Rapnet's Adapter with a real GCN controller offers the more authentic GameCube on N64 experience, but you're going to pay a lot to get there. I'll say for using up just one controller slot, it's worth it, but I wouldn't spend to have an all GameCube controller setup. Now for the winner that trumps all of these alternatives in my opinion, bam! Switch Online controller with an adapter. This adapter is RetroTime's Blue Retro wireless adapter for N64. It's compatible with many Bluetooth controllers, and I hear the results are great for those. But for our interest here, we'll be using the Switch Online wireless N64 controller, simply because this is a perfect reproduction N64 controller. I really love all these wireless reprints of these older controllers. Even my most well-kept originals, they still have an aged, mushy feel to them, even after restoring them with methods like boiling the rubber button pads. It helps, but compared to these newer controllers, I'm sorry, the newer controllers are better. For the sake of N64, yeah, this newer controller is better. The buttons feel really good, the plastic is on point, and this stick. This fresh feeling analog stick is the reason to get this controller. I can't really remember how a fresh OEM stick felt, but if I dig way back to the deepest parts of my memories, I think I can say this newer stick is spot on. Unfortunately, the design is mostly the same as the original, so it could be subjected to the same degradation that has ruined many N64 sticks. I read that Nintendo finally put proper lubricant in these newer sticks, so hopefully they'll last much longer. But we'll have to wait and see the real longevity of these sticks. So as long as you don't play too much Mario Party 1. So first impressions are the best yet, because as great as GameCube style sticks can be, this is the intended design for N64 games. Of course, it's not just about the stick, it's about this adapter, so let's see. And that's what I like to fucking see. This is the only other instance where the results are a spot-on match for a fresh OEM stick, which I guess shouldn't be surprising, as I suppose this is a fresh OEM stick. Seeing how inputs are registered was very interesting. I'm really happy to see there doesn't seem to be any missing inputs, as it could have completely ruined this setup. What's really crazy is when I try to draw a shape. It's admittedly a little challenging to actually move the stick, but as you can see, the smaller shape is neither a circle or a square, rather a match for the octagonal shape. I want to say it's thanks to the unique spring resistance of N64 sticks, as well as how well this adapter translates the inputs. With these results, this is by far the most accurate to original N64 controllers yet. And that's very exciting for this new wireless controller, which does have rumble built in and it feels amazing. I hope it just goes without saying that, yeah, this is the best one. All of the best qualities of the alternatives are accounted for here. Perfect stick input geometry, all accounted inputs, natural turning at slower speeds, and natural acceleration, all coming from a real feeling N64 stick. Unless you have a mint conditioned, fully restored original stick, then you're probably not going to get much better than this. To be fair, this video was mostly on GameCube style stick alternatives, but like I said at the beginning, when it comes specifically to N64 games, then you can't get better than this design, as much as you may want to hate it. The longevity is still up for speculation, since Nintendo hardly changed the design much except adding lube to the internals. The blue retro adapter is around $30, and the wireless N64 controller will at least cost you around $60, including shipping, so it's about as expensive as the steel sticks parts, which may last far longer to be sure, but I can't comment much as I've never used one. I'll admit, it's hard to recommend this option considering how much it costs, but for me, just one person, to now have the perfect way to play N64 games on real N64 hardware, with an authentic feeling, first-party wireless controller that feels better than any other N64 controller I have, then it's worth it. If that doesn't jive with you, then maybe stick to 8-bit dope. The real GameCube controller route is a little too out there, especially in price. Not to mention you'd still have to worry about the condition of the GameCube controller stick itself. I hope I did a good job illustrating the performances of these sticks to help you make a more informed purchase. I can't say I see myself using either the XYAB stick or RetroBit sticks ever again. But 8-bit dough gets a thumbs up for me, and I'd happily use it. I'd like to thank those who watched up until the end. This is a pretty niche topic that I doubt most people will care about, but I'm oddly passionate about N64 as it's the first console I have vivid memories with. I hate seeing all the slander the original controller gets because so many people don't really understand it. Yes, it's a flawed design. Yes, analog sticks have gotten way better since, but for N64 games, you won't find a better way to play. And with that out of the way, all that's left for me to say is thank you for watching.